911 operator, what is a call that got you the chills? Call came in around 6 a.m. in the morning. Teenage kids had gone downstairs to find their father collapsed on the kitchen floor. Per his son, he was unconscious but still breathing. Per protocol, I confirmed their address, sent the case to dispatch, and stayed on the line. I had the kids turn him onto his side into the recovery position. I reassured them. For a couple of teens, they really held it together. I told them to monitor his breathing. They said he was still breathing, kind of. And that's when I heard it on the other end of the line. That wasn't breathing, that was a death rattle. Agonal breathing. That was the first time as an EMD I'd heard that awful fucking rattling sound in a live environment. God help me, may it be my last. In an instant, I upgraded the case. This was no longer an unconscious patient, but somebody in cardiac arrest. Dispatch was notified. I saw additional resources being attached. I told the two teenagers, in a voice that I hope had even a fracture of the composure they exhibited, that we needed to roll their father onto his back. That we needed to commence CPR straight away. I work in a job where you have people in their 20s and 30s calling up screaming, hysterical, and utterly inconsolable because of a fucking headache or a cut finger or a sore back. And yet these two kids barely out of their teens were pumping away at their dad's chest without hesitation, working in tandem to perform the best damn CPR I've ever heard over the phone in my 6 years as an EMD. All I could hear in the background as I helped them keep pace was their father's rattling breathing. I'm not religious, but you can bet I pray to God Almighty to just let this one live. Please, for fuck's sake, just let these kids keep their father. Is that so much to ask? At least give the guy a chance to say his goodbyes properly. It was only when the sirens in the background drowned out all the other sounds and the crews confirmed they were at the scene that I quickly told those kids how proud I was of them and disconnected. I made it a point of mine to never follow up jobs like this, but curiosity eventually got the best of me. I found out a few days later that the guy had passed away. I wish I had never followed up. This is the narrator speaking. So I've had to call emergency services before, and I can confirm that, like, personally, like when you feel like you have to, most people, they don't want to call emergency services, so they'll really only call emergency services if they feel like there is no other way to deal with the situation at hand. So it'll usually be in situations where they feel like trapped, or they are in a lot of danger, or yes, so a lot of people will just completely panic. So I can understand what this person is talking about. Like, I'm not the type of person to like for me, I really quickly, like, it didn't take long for me after calling the cops for me to stop panicking, but still, like, most people will be extremely hard to like handle on the other end of the line. Back to narrating. The death rattle is seriously one of the most terrifying sounds I've ever heard. I have no clue as to what it sounds like, and now I am fairly certain that I don't want to. A little after 2 a.m. I got a call of a car gone off a 100-foot embankment into the river. As officers arrive on the scene and begin rescue/body search, I got relayed the names of the deceased who had been friends of mine. I knew 5 out of 6 in the car, and as the search was wrapping up, I began to get calls from the parents of the victims who knew me. Rough night in a rural area. Occurred about 2 weeks ago. Get a pretty standard non-urgent difficulty breathing call for meds. Get units started, no problems. Last thing I tell her is to unlock her front door and come back to the phone. She had a corded landline. She gets up and just never comes back. Just get an open line. Can hear some shuffling in the background, nothing distressing. Honestly, just thought she put the phone down and forgot about it. But we are supposed to stay on the line until confirmation of everything, so I didn't hang up. When the fire department gets there, they inform me she had died home alone while on the phone with me. She basically dropped dead immediately after unlocking the front door. I was shocked and had to go back and re-listen to the call, knowing that woman was dying for a good 2 to 3 minutes and no one could save her. I hope you're okay after that one. I am now. In this line of work, unfortunately, it's just the fact that sometimes you will listen to someone die. This one just took me by surprise, as most of the time I can tell when someone isn't going to make it. But this one had no warning signs and I made it through a whole conversation before it happened. Never going to forget that, but also rest assured I'm not haunted or anything. I don't know what you guys get paid, but I'm not sure it's enough whatever it is. Last night I had a call where some lady was calling to complain that these kids were parkouring on the building. While on the phone, one of the kids slipped and fell. Hearing the thud of his body through the phone and her inconsolable scream after wasn't fun. Not really the chills, but this stuck with me because it'd just be such a weird story this guy has for life. Guy called in the morning after going onto his balcony with his morning coffee and is greeted by a severed arm. Just the arm, nothing else. Turns out someone had jumped from a much higher floor than his, smacked his arm on the railing on the way down, and the impact took it clean off. The remains of the body had already been cleaned up on the ground by the time this guy called, and he had just slept through it all. It was a year ago. A father called 911 stating his 2-year-old daughter wasn't breathing. I had tried to instruct him on how to do CPR while I got the ambulance out there. He kept refusing and telling me he didn't know how, besides me insisting I would help him do it. He told me that his daughter had fallen down the stairs 2 days before the call and that he didn't know what was happening. The mother was screaming in the background. I started to get nervous due to the fact that it was 2 minutes into the call begging this man to do CPR in his baby. He gave the phone to what I'm assuming is the sister of the mother, and I gave her instructions on how to attempt to revive this little baby girl. I told the officer something was going on with this and I didn't feel right about it, and they get there and I never knew anything until the news a few weeks later. The father and grandmother were arrested for murder on this little baby. She passed away due to consistent abuse by the father when the mom was gone or at work. I never forgot that call. My aunt was a 911 dispatcher for a couple months and she told me about these 2 calls she had. This little boy around 6 or 7 was bawling on the phone because his big brother had shot himself in the head and his face and brains were everywhere. The other one is that this little girl, I think was 3, had called because her stepdad was beating the shit out of the mom, and my aunt said that she could hear the mom screaming in the background. And so after a while the dad came in and beat the shit out of the girl for calling the police, and so my aunt had to hear this 3-year-old little girl getting the shit beat out of her while her mom was trying to stop the stepdad. Wife just shot herself in the head. Husband wasn't sure if she was beyond help. So I have him start CPR. At this point I'm assuming she's gone, but I want to give him something to do and be able to look back and feel like he did everything he could have. While pumping on her chest, their kid, who was about 10, walks in. He starts crying to have the kid help. So I tell the kid to grab a towel and apply pressure to the wound. Telling a child to hold pressure on his mom's self-inflicted gunshot to her head while coaching the father through CPR. The kid was super focused. Dad was about to lose it multiple times. When medics arrived, she was viable. They transported her. I just assumed she didn't make it, but there's always a chance. We rarely get closure. As a first responder, we suck at letting our dispatchers know the outcome. We get what we give on the radio and we continue about our business until we complete the call. If you know your first responders, just send them a message and ask. I try my best to incorporate the dispatchers so they can get that closure too. Thanks for what you do. You're literally our lifeline and we couldn't do it without you. Firefighter. We delivered a baby before the ambulance got there and the dispatchers were all on the edge of their seats and you could hear the relief in their voices when they asked if the baby was okay. I also drove the dad to the hospital in his truck as he was still hyperventilating so he didn't have to drive. I was a PO who responded to a surf neck injury. Got there before any medical personnel and the guy clearly has a broken neck with partial paralyzation. He was still conscious, but there was, of course, nothing we could do for him in the field except wait for paramedics. We could also do nothing but get him to the hospital. We tried to find out what happened to him but didn't want to pry too much because of HIPAA. Still, it's tough to go home and have no idea how someone's life changed while you were there. We get a call at like 7 AM from a male who sounded very out of it. He kept saying that his wife was hurt, but we couldn't get much else out of him at first. After some back and forth, we had found out that he got in a fight with her the previous day, like 8 to 10 hours earlier, and hit her repeatedly with one of those meat tenderizer mallets. Then he decided that he couldn't live with it and attempted to cut his own throat. He couldn't follow through with that, so he slit his wrists. He had lost enough blood to go into shock but not die, and called us when he came to. When responders got on the scene, the wife was still alive, though obviously in some seriously rough shape. She She was transported, though I'm not sure if she made it or not. Guy who had just shot his friend with a crossbow because his friend said he could dodge a magic missile in D&D. The guy was laughing about it until the point when the cops came and arrested him. Well, magic missile never misses. For real, it deals weak damage for a spell of its level, with the benefit that it doesn't miss and deals force damage, which can't be stopped by most resistances. That dude was a prick for trying to claim he dodged the attack. I mean, probably didn't need to get shot by a crossbow. But still, EMT here. When you're in this profession long enough, these people that are experiencing the worst moments of their life just become a job to you. Like, yeah, there's a person dying in the back of my ambulance, but I'm also thinking what I'm gonna eat for dinner later or my plans for tonight. I find that kinda chilling. As for something that stuck with me, it's this sick obese lady who was also a hoarder and had a ton of animals in her house. We picked her up from a hospital and had to transport her to a disabled hole, because she can no longer take care of herself even if she's still all there mentally. When we got to her room, it was no bigger than a cheap motel and she began crying. It was this kind of cry where she had the realization that she no longer has control of her life and that she'll rot away in this small room until she dies. You never really think about the emotions that people go through in situations like that, and my heart broke for her. Something sad that crossed my mind is how she probably got that way from dealing with trauma. A lot of people who end up in these extreme situations are victims of something. I don't want to assume anything about a stranger, but I wish life had been better for her. Narrator speaking right now. Personally, I'm disabled. I have chronic fatigue. It means that I'm still not done with like pre-university schooling, even at an age of 20 years old. So, yeah, I kind of had to have this slow realization that, yeah, I'm just probably going to be disabled for the rest of my life. So now it's like it goes up and down, but like it can be pretty tough to like just realize your, there isn't really anything you can do. Like you can do some mitigation stuff, but like people that get that obese have very low chance of like losing weight. I think like, I don't remember the exact statistics, so I'm not going to like spread any misinformation, but like the vast majority of people that are obese never become like healthy again. So, and there are a lot of reasons why. So for this woman, like she just realizes she just doesn't have control over her life, and that is very, very tough. Back to narrating. One of my first calls out of training was from two teens who had left for a vacation with their dad, and when they returned home they found their mom's dead, bloated and rotting corpse in the garage. He'd committed suicide. I don't remember much of the call because another operator took over when I sort of froze up. I only worked as a 911 operator for about half a year. This is off topic, but I'm very curious, what is training like for a 911 operator? In the early 1990s, I had a pen pal who did this for a while. He lived in a small city with a largely rural area of the Deep South. I do remember that much of her training consisted of learning which calls were the highest priority and which were things that weren't. I remember one story she got where a convenience store worker called in the wee hours of the morning to say that a man had just walked into the store on a night where the temperature was around freezing, dressed in a G-string, pantyhose and heels, and that was it. They were terrified, and he turned out to be a male prostitute who was totally strung out on drugs. She didn't work there all that long. She said there were only 2 calls she got during that time that really disturbed her, and she actually quit because of an issue with a coworker. If I recall correctly, she had something on said coworker that would have gotten her fired on the spot, but she said, "I know she needs the job." We do a few weeks of off-floor training and then on-floor training. Call taking first, then dispatch. Floor training can take a year or more. There is also 3 weeks at the Public Safety Academy. We have a success rate of about 50% of those hired, which is standard, not 911 but alarm dispatcher. We monitored for an assisted living tower, kind of halfway between independent living and a nursing home. And one night we started getting fire alarms. 1 apartment unit to start, then 2, it quickly multiplied. We set the fire department on the first alarm per procedure and got no answer at the front desk of the place since it was after hours. After 1 or 2 updates on the multiplying alarms, I waited to get his position to find out if we had a real fire. It certainly looked like it. The alarm seemed to be coming in sequentially from room to room and floor to floor. The thing was, it didn't stick to just fire alarms. We also monitored the dedicated medical alarms in these apartments, and they were lighting up along the same pattern. We reported those to FD Dispatch too, so I was at the limit of what I could do. When I finally got an update, it felt like my chair was spinning. Yes, there was a fire in this apartment building and they were trying to put it out. There were even some legitimate medicals, but those were most likely people signaling that they were trapped in the rooms. The other possibility, and it was impossible to tell the difference unless you were a firefighter on the scene, was that the medical button or pull cord mechanism had melted and sent a signal as it died. We watched for way too long as that building sent up ghost alarms no one could do anything with but wait it out, hoping if there was a finger on the button, they'd be found.